Live in your world. Play in ours. That's right, you geeks. You've made it to the Echo Screen, the official podcast of the Clan of the Grey Wolf. As always, I'm your host, the Commodore, and you already know that because you've been listening to our two-part series on the history of video game consoles and the winners of each console generation. We're going to jump right into part 2 now. We've got Rue here with me, and we're going to start talking about the evolution into 3D gaming. We've left the two-dimensional games behind. We're ready to start moving into the realm of 3D. Let's see what happens. Alright, that leads us into the next generation of consoles, the 6th generation. We're replacing our game right now. Grand Theft Auto 3 is going up in the place of Final Fantasy 7. So, we've got now a three-dimensional space in video games, and now we actually have the hardware to back it up.
And the talent, the experience from the game designers.
Absolutely. So we have people that are experienced in working in three-dimensional space. We've got the hardware to back it up. We've got great ideas of how to use 3D, which really initially was a problem as well. Mm-hmm. Sony didn't have a console before the PS1, folks. They went from not being in the market to being the dominant leader. Remember, PlayStation 1 sells over 102 million units versus 33 million of the 64, even though the PlayStation 1 is sold for a lot longer time. But anyway, not the point. They sold a hell of a lot more consoles. They were dominant in the marketplace at this point. So, here's our combatants. Without further ado, the 6th generation. We've got the Sega Dreamcast, which debuted in 1999. The PS2, which debuts in the year 2000. In the year 2000! We've got the Nintendo GameCube, which debuts in 2001. And the Xbox, the new boy in town, the Microsoft...
3 days before the GameCube.
3 days before the GameCube, released in 2001. The Xbox, the truly American game system.
The laughing stock.
The big Corvette of the game systems. It's huge. It's badass. It's got tons of power.
It'll crush your grandma.
It'll crush your skull if you put it on top of your head.
Back in 2000, or whenever it is that Microsoft said, now we're getting to the game system business, people just laughed and laughed.
Right, because, and one of the things we're not talking about here, because I don't know that it's pertinent to this podcast, but it will be in the future, is where the PC is. And Microsoft, at this point, is ubiquitous with Windows PCs, which, at this moment, PC dominance is undeniable. Now, this is a little bit, the Linux kernel is out there. People are starting to think about other operating systems. They're starting to think about alternatives. But at this point, Macintosh is really in the midst of trying to stage its comeback. Windows is synonymous with PC gaming at this point. So Microsoft making this leap into what is obviously unknown territory to them seems almost like a joke. Mm-hmm. I mean, the first time I see the Xbox, it's almost a laughingstock. I mean, am I wrong about that?
No, I think most people thought that. But and then Halo comes out, and it's not quite so funny anymore. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
So the Dreamcast won this one, right?
Right. The Dreamcast the Dreamcast didn't win this one. But one of the things that's interesting... Well, all right. So, clearly the PlayStation 2 wins this generation because the PlayStation 2 to this point, in terms of home consoles, is the greatest selling console system ever.
And it's still outselling the PlayStation 3 in certain parts of the world.
Still outselling the PlayStation 3. 140 million consoles as of June of this year. 140 million consoles. That's a lot.
Are people just getting
Of
two and
gaming
hoping
hardware.
that they breed or something?
I don't know. I mean, hey, look, if the Wii is just two GameCubes duct taped together, maybe if we duct tape two PS2s together, they'll make a PS4 and we can skip right over the PS3. Is that how? Maybe I don't know.
Bad podcast for the PS3.
Yeah, I know. But really, I mean, can you tell where we're going to go with the next generation, folks? I don't know. But so I talked about jumping into the three-dimensional space, but let's talk about innovation on the PS2. What do we got?
Okay, well, innovation. I think perhaps one of the biggest innovations that they had was that you had a standalone. I think this is for the first time on any sort of game system. You have a standalone DVD player. Even the Xbox, a year later, you had to buy an extra little peripheral for.
Yes,
what did I
you
say before? Peripherals just aren't going to make it very well.
Right. Especially if they're a necessity.
At PlayStation 2, if little Jimmy says, I want a PlayStation 2 to play some games, and then Father Thomas or whatever,
Thomas.
I don't know.
I don't know.
If he says,
With the knee-high socks and the pipe.
I don't know, son. It's $300. That's pretty expensive. Oh, but it plays DVDs. Oh, well, those newfangled DVDs are kind of big. They've been out there a few years. Why not?
Maybe we'll make the switch.
Pachow. And
Right,
then
it
you have
becomes
your
the center of the
system.
home entertainment. I mean,
There you go.
for the first time ever, I think that really happens on a truly new level. What the CDI was aiming for in 1990 doesn't become a reality until the PlayStation 2 really
Right.
becomes the center of the home entertainment
And
system.
so that was the big innovation, and that was one of the big reasons why PlayStation 2 is the most dominant console ever.
Second thing, we joked about the Dreamcast, but the Dreamcast came shipped with a modem inside of it. A modem because internet and online technologies were getting to the point where people were interested in, hey, maybe I can play my new Mortal Kombat game with
But-
somebody halfway across the world.
But very niche, and
Unquestionably.
didn't
Small market
work
as well.
out for him.
Look, consoles, even to this point, this is, I would argue, the generation that really made consoles, not video game systems, not a luxury item. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it happened earlier. I would say it happened earlier rather than later. But consoles still to this point, there's still this kind of step up. You have to spend a considerable amount of money. It's a big investment to go out and buy a console and then have a TV to play it on, and now you're adding another dimension of having some kind of online service. This is the heyday of the AOLs and the dial-up is dying and all these other kinds of things. But the online component is important to mention right now. And the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, the Dreamcast, even the GameCube have some ability to get on and game. Did the GameCube have capability in North America? I think it only had capability in Japan.
I think it did, but only for like one or two games, and those were Phantasy Star Online. So essentially, no.
But it did have connectivity in Japan, correct? Am I right about that?
I think for the same kind of game.
Okay.
But
So it's same deal.
Essentially, no. Really, essentially.
So really, the GameCube didn't, and that we can argue that might be a part of why it kind of struggled. But the GameCube struggled for a lot of reasons.
Well, let's look at the stuff. PlayStation 2 had the innovation with the DVD player. Games, once again, the big winner for the PlayStation 2 and a big loser for the GameCube. And to a degree, the Xbox, because GameCube basically had just Nintendo games. That was about it. Maybe
Yes.
some second parties.
There were some,
Xbox had some good first party stuff. They had Halo, but they also had sports games and so forth. They were by far the best graphical powerhouse, so
Right.
they got some of the best sports games. That helped a lot for them.
Well, when it was released, I
Yeah.
agree with you. Yeah.
PlayStation 2, however, had everything else. I mean, look at this, folks. Grand Theft Auto 3.
Completely changes the whole game. No pun intended.
I mean, it gave birth to a new genre of video game. How often does that happen? The open world sandbox. Think back to the first time you played Grand Theft Auto 3 or any of its sequels if you started with one of those. The absolute feeling of freedom.
right.
This is what a video game should be.
Well,
I mean,
and
not killing hookers necessarily.
No.
But just being able to do what you want.
The sense of freedom in the three-dimensional space, I should say, because
Well,
there were
yeah.
Grand Theft Autos that you had that kind of freedom with before, but this
not
was
to this extent.
It wasn't
at
to
all.
this extent, and one of the reasons why, even if it wasn't quantitatively different, it certainly was qualitatively different. You are
Yeah.
walking around the streets of a city, and you can do whatever the hell you want to.
I mean, yeah.
Good, bad, and different. There's a tremendous number of things to do. Look, I still haven't collected all the secret packages in Grand Theft Auto 3. I I still haven't, made the collection of all the cars. I haven't done all the stuff that you can do. You can still find things to do in Grand Theft Auto 3.
And even Vice City and San Andreas, built on the same engines, but still by themselves, are also giant worlds to explore. And San Andreas, I think, even with Grand Theft Auto 4, I still like actually San Andreas the most. Not necessarily for the content, once again, but just because it is huge. Mm-hmm. You can go between 3 big cities and then the countryside, or up to a mountain, or into the desert.
Right.
Ridiculous.
My argument against San Andreas, why I like Vice City, is because I think Vice City hits the perfect balance, because San Andreas is, in some senses, is almost too big. That's when we start to get, and this happens with Grand Theft Auto 4 as well. We're getting ahead of our game here, but it's almost so big that it's intimidating. Mm-hmm. I just want to go and I want to do my missions, and then I'll dick around later and figure out all the things I got to collect. It can almost be intimidating. It's so big, but the point is, it's there. You can do it with these systems. It's a huge area to look at and to be able to explore. And that was something that was totally unknown before because of the DVD technology, because of the storage capacity of DVD. And the PlayStation 2, again, was the only... and then the Xbox after it, of course. The only real
But it's
adopters.
the only one that had those games, at least for some time.
Exactly.
So it had that. It had Grand Theft Auto series. It had Final Fantasy series still. It had... Just looking back at my PS2 collection.
Oh my gosh! For
Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, the Kingdom Hearts.
Guitar Hero.
A
giant jolt in the arm for the PS2 late in its life.
Why go buy a PS3 if I can get Guitar Hero for the PS2?
I mean, the games were once again the big winner for the PlayStation 2.
All the way across the map.
The price.
Maybe not all the way, because there were Xbox had Halo.
Yeah.
There were a few games that
GameCube
were
and Xbox
there.
had some great games.
Yes,
Smash Brothers Melee is super awesome for the GameCube,
and again Zelda
and Zelda and all that. But PlayStation 2 just had more.
Yeah, Sunshine,
really
not so
games.
much, not so much.
But anyway, the price for PlayStation 2 once again neither hindered nor hurt. I mean, it's $300 when it came out, which is a bit of money. But once again, the innovation of the DVD player helped to defray that.
And DVD players, system. Right? And DVD players were around. They were ubiquitous enough at that point to where it wasn't a tremendous expense. You see where I'm going with this, folks. Mm-hmm. DVD was already out for 4 years by the time these consoles launch. DVD drives, in that case, because it had been out for 4 years, were relatively inexpensive.
You know what? There is another big innovation I forgot about for the PlayStation 2.
Mm-hmm.
Backwards compatibility.
Absolutely. So first...
that is... Okay, many things made me get it. I never had a PlayStation. The PlayStation 2, a lot of things made me want to get that. Grand Theft Auto 3 and Final Fantasy X. But the backwards compatibility really sold it for me because I could go back, get all these PlayStation games that I may have played but never owned or fully explored.
Sure.
And then I have a huge library already.
That's right. And you could, it helped people in adoption because I could see spending the money on a PlayStation 2 because I can go and play all the newest games. But if I don't want to spend, $50 a game or however expensive they were at that point, if I didn't want to go and spend that kind of money on a game, I could just go to the bargain bin, at Walmart or Target and
$20 for greatest hits for
pick
the
up
PlayStation.
a greatest hits PlayStation 1 game and catch up on the things that maybe I missed or play some of my favorites again. I'll never, even if I throw my PlayStation 1 right out the window, I can always play my original PlayStation games on my PS2, which to this day, because I was thinking about, I don't have a PS2 right now, and I've even been thinking about getting one just to have one around to play all the old PlayStation discs I've got sitting around. So I don't know, folks. I think backwards compatibility is a huge piece of the puzzle, something that was a necessity at this moment. I don't know that it's necessarily something that you have to see for every generation, but at that moment it was absolutely pivotal.
Mm-hmm.
And
innovative.
And I think that's where we've seen again the PS2. I don't know that it fits. I think it fits your model more than any other generation before it.
And that's why it's the most successful.
And that's why it's the most successful.
Of any
it is
of them.
clearly the greatest home console ever released. And I think that there have been so many great successes